Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dave Strohmeyer, Chairman of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. I'd like to welcome you to the first, and hopefully not last, but the first Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Summit. This time occurring, yes. We are delighted that this inaugural event is happening here in Billings, Montana, in the heart of the Treasure State, in the heart of what is this expansive region that we are calling the Greater Northwest region, stretching from Chicago clear to the Pacific Northwest. Over the next day and a half, you will be treated to some stellar presentations from experts in transportation, passenger rail, and just plain old community members who are interested and knowledgeable in and passionate about what passenger rail means for our transportation portfolio in this region. You see up here, together we can do this. We're of the mind that even though this is a heavy lift here in the state of Montana, here in this Greater Northwest region, and here in this nation, as heavy a lift as it is to enhance and expand passenger rail, this is something that is long overdue. It's part of a rail revolution. It's part of a transformational moment in our nation. It's part of a passenger rail renaissance. And you all are a part of this. And at the center of gravity of this event is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which you'll hear a little bit more about later. But in the middle of that act is language that directs the U.S. Department of Transportation to conduct a nationwide study of restoring discontinued long-distance routes. And that begins right here in Billings, Montana today, my friends. So we are going to have a great session. Just a few housekeeping items of business. These sessions are going to run 50 minutes in length. We're going to have to stick to a pretty tight time frame and schedule because we have folks joining us virtually out there. So hello to all of our virtual registrants of this event. We are totally sold out for the in-person event here, and lest the mayor of Billings get on my case for exceeding the limit of number of folks in a room, we thought we better clamp it down on the number of in-person registrants. Virtual registrants are still out there and have exceeded our capacity, but that's all good. So we'll be moving along at a pretty fast-paced clip. It's going to be higher speed, maybe not high speed, but we are going to move this along in a way that hopefully does not lull all of you into a coma, and that at the end of the day, we will have a deliverable, and that is both information to give to the Federal Railroad Administration on this nationwide study, and also information that you can take back to your communities, to your interests, and to your stakeholders as far as how we move this initiative forward. At the 40-minute mark of these panels, we will most likely try to have some time for engagement among all of you and the panelists, and also engagement among the panelists themselves. Right now, we're going to queue up a few additional welcome remarks from the mayor of Billings, Montana. We'll also have an introduction and a welcome from Norma Gorno, who is a council member with the Northern Cheyenne Tribe. We'll then hear from FRA Administrator Amit Bose. And we are going to shift the agenda a little bit such that the statements of welcome from Senators, U.S. Senators John Tester and Steve Daines fall after Administrator Bose, because he has a plane to catch, ironically. He will not be catching a train out of here, and so we hope to change that in the future. But with that, I would like to turn it over to Mayor Bill Cole of Billings, Montana. Mayor.
Thank you, Dave, and what a great crowd that has gathered here together today. And Dave, in case it doesn't happen later, you and your team have just done extraordinary work. Can we have a round of applause for Dave and his team? I mean, really well done. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Billings. I hope that you find Montana's largest city to be a friendly and fun place over the next couple days. I also want to extend a special Montana welcome to any first-time visitors or out-of-state visitors who might be with us today, including Administrator Bose, Board Member Hedlund, and Deputy Assistant Teller. In case you didn't know, every day in Billings is sunny, and it never drops below 70 degrees. So please come back. Today, Billings is thriving economically and focused on sustainable growth. In 2020, the Wall Street Journal came out with its Index of Emerging Residential Markets, which measures the health and sustainability of the 300 largest metro areas in the United States. Billings has finished in the top 10 for 4 out of the last 6 quarters. Only one other city in the United States, Raleigh, North Carolina, has a better track record with 5 out of 6 appearances in that top 10. To date, the discussion about bringing passenger rail service back to southern Montana has looked to the future, focusing on what that asset would mean for tourism, quality of life, the environment, and economic development in our state. I, for one, hope that the idea proves feasible when subjected to impartial economic analysis and the inevitable political horse trading. And although it only makes sense to look forward, this history major also thinks that it makes sense to look backwards and remember how this city began in 1882. Many Montanans, including my own citizens, do not know that Billings owes its very existence to the railroad, more specifically, the Northern Pacific, and to the man it was named after, our city that is, Frederick Billings. Billings, the man, was a lawyer turned California 49er, turned real estate developer, turned railroad man, turned conservationist. As the longtime president of the Northern Pacific, Frederick Billings shepherded the railroad through repeated financial struggles, Washington, D.C. intrigues, and numerous lawsuits. Today, that history is memorialized not just here in Billings, Montana, but in an excellent biography written by the author Robin Winks, and at the Billings Farm and Museum in Woodstock, Vermont. Frederick Billings' history as a conservationist and agricultural innovator is recounted at the only facility managed by the National Park Service in Vermont, the Marsh, Billings, Rockefeller National Historical Park, which I visited a couple weeks ago and which is depicted on the back of the 2020 Vermont Quarter. So Billings is a railroad town. The railroad has shaped our economy, land use patterns, demographics, and history for 140 years. As we sit here, 50 yards or so from the Northern Pacific right-of-way, now owned by BNSF, I can't think of a more fitting place to hold this summit. I hope your efforts over the next couple days yield great results for the future of Billings and of Montana, and also help my city reconnect with its roots as a key player in the history of Western railroads and the namesake of one of the most important railroad men of the 19th century, Frederick Billings. So welcome to Billings, and good luck over the next couple days. Back to Dave.
All right, thank you, Mayor Cole. If you go online to the agenda, the electronic agenda for the summit, you will see complete biographies of all of our panelists and speakers. So I'm not going to repeat all of that today, but I will say that this is a very esteemed group that we have with us, very qualified group. And thank you, Mayor, for that introduction. Norma, do you want to come on up? Norma Gorno is a council person with the Northern Cheyenne Tribe. Norma.
I'm short. Good morning or good afternoon. I woke up at 5 o'clock to be here this morning. I actually drove. So anyway, it's good to see everybody here. We're glad that you're here. I'm a member of the, I have to read the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. I'm an ex-official member representing the Northern Cheyenne Tribe. excuse me, my name is Norma Gorno, and I am a member of the tribe, and just most recently, I was elected to the tribal council after I had retired. So now I work for the council, and very happy to see all of you here in Billings and to be able to participate in this summit. Ironically, in our Cheyenne language, there is no word for train or railway. So when we talk about a rail or the train, we describe what it is, we don't have an actual word for it. So it was kind of interesting. I was trying to think, well, how would I say train where they could understand? So the way we define it is we say ma'adamiohe. And what that means is it's an iron machine running on its iron road, its own iron road. So that was how our ancestors described it, and that word has stayed with us. So now we just say ma'adamiohe. That describes a train. Just a little tidbit for your information. Anyway, I just have a short story to share with you. In January of 21, one of my nephews came to visit me, and he's a young Cheyenne young man. He's in his 20s, and I was really talking, and I kept talking about, I have a bucket list, I'm gonna do this, and I've done this, and I wanna go see this, and I wanna go experience this. And he said, Auntie, what's a bucket list? So I told him, what's the things that you aspire to, that you want to do, and that are fun and exciting, and you know, you may see something on TV that interests you, so you write that down, you put it on your bucket list. He said, oh, okay. So a few more visits, and he's starting his own bucket list. And so around April of last year, he came to the house and he said, Auntie, he said, there's one thing I really want to do this year. He said, it's on my bucket list. He said, I want to go see the Yankees play a game in their own stadium. And I said, oh, okay, well, that sounds good. That's doable. And so a couple more visits later, he says, well, Auntie, what are we going to do? I said, okay, are you serious? He said, yeah, I'm serious. Okay, all right, we will go. We will go to New York. I said, so we started planning, and the first question was, well, how do you want to get there? Because New York is a long ways from Busby, Montana. That's where I'm from. So I said, so we have options. Do you want to go by plane or do you want to go by train? And he said, I want to go by train. So we made our arrangements, looked at the Yankees schedule, and made it so where we could attend 2 games. The Yankees were playing the Red Sox on a Sunday, and they were playing the Phillies on a Tuesday. And so he was all excited. And so we made our reservations, got our schedule together. So July of 2021, just a little over a year ago, my daughter drove us to Havre, which is 329 miles from where we live, so we could get on the train and go to New York City. So we get there, it was a lot of fun. The excitement in this young man's face was just, you know, I will never forget that trip. And he will never forget it either, because it was so fun. It was something that he was able to do and plan. We had a great time, watched the Yankees play, and we were there for 6 days, and we did other activities. But then it was time to come home, so we come back on the train. But then we had to drive 329 miles to get back home. But it was a really wonderful experience for him. So a train isn't just to get from point A to point B. In his instance, and what he was able to experience by riding a train, number one, he had never ridden a train, by going to New York City, where he had never been, and fulfilling one of his bucket lists. That is, you know, the most wonderful thing that ever happened to this young man. And because there was a rail service that was able to take him right to Penn Station and just absorb everything that was going on. And so, you know, a rail for us around here is really important because we, just like I said, we had to drive 329 miles to get on a train. And even to come from Busby to Billings, it's 100 miles for us to come here to catch a plane. So we're our council is very supportive of the rail service, and we appreciate all the work that's gone into this to bring awareness and interest into having a rail service here. So I appreciate all of you being here today, and I hope you enjoy the summit. Thank you.
We will try to get that train to Forsyth, Montana. What do you think, Norma? Okay. Well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our administrator of the Federal Railroad Administration, Amit Bose. We are delighted to have him with us. I'm not going to give much more of an introduction because he has a plane to catch not too long from now. So, Administrator Bose.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Commissioner. It is an honor for me to be here. I remember last year speaking to the authority virtually, and it's just really good to be here in person and seeing everybody in this room and really feel the enthusiasm and the energy. And thank you for welcoming to the Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Summit. I want to thank the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority for inviting me and the many conference sponsors for making this summit possible. It's great to be here in Billings after the Secretary and I just published an article about the importance of high-quality passenger rail in America, and to be among so many people passionate about rail and more specifically passenger rail transportation. I look forward to talking about the incredible funding opportunities on the horizon, the potential for new and restored long-distance service, and the actions the Federal Railroad Administration is taking to build a stronger rail network overall, one that allows people and goods to get where they need to go safely and efficiently. This is an exciting time to be involved in rail, with the passage of President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law. I know you share in this excitement. I also recognize and acknowledge the authority's strong support of those efforts. The infrastructure law is a reality due to the years of efforts like yours. The infrastructure law is the administration's plan for building a better America, and it's a $1.2 trillion investment in our nation's infrastructure and economic competitiveness. Across the country, the law is already creating good-paying jobs, helping fight climate change, advancing equity, including rural-urban, boosting manufacturing, strengthening critical links in our supply chains, and improving the lives of working families. The law delivers immediate benefits and lays the foundation for decades of upcoming economic growth. It's particularly true for rail. As you know, the infrastructure law tasks the FRA with conducting an Amtrak daily long-distance service study to evaluate the restoration of intercity passenger rail services and the potential for new long-distance routes. This is the first time in decades that the Department of Transportation has been tasked with examining the potential and possible restoration and expansion of long-distance services. Earlier studies focused instead on the reduction of service. Simply put, Congress is saying long-distance service matters in America, and it has a place in our national rail network. I want to thank Congress for recognizing these efforts and moving the ball forward. I'm thankful for the persistence and determination of the Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Coalition members who were pivotal in drafting the legislative text in Section 22214 of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which helped make this study a reality. Now, we have an opportunity to move away from the trend of service reduction and instead lay the foundation and framework for an expanded and interconnected long-distance passenger rail network throughout the United States. It's an opportunity to grow and establish essential connections not only in heavily populated places. It's an opportunity to and from establishing services from smaller, often rural communities, communities bearing the burdens of passenger rail reductions and fewer travel options over the last 20 years. It will advance the cause of equity in intercity passenger rail development. I'm here today to say I firmly believe that intercity passenger rail has incredible potential to meet the transportation needs we have across our country, which includes communities connected by long-distance routes. Some critics like to frame long-distance routes as unnecessary and unwanted. They question who benefits from deeper investments in such services. People looking to visit friends, families, and loved ones benefit, as they make up more than half of all riders on long-distance routes. People looking to enjoy the freedom and ease of trains benefit, as do business travelers who want to be able to work or read on the train. Older people and individuals with disabilities benefit, as do Americans without a car or easy access to rail travel. Of course, passengers traveling end-to-end on long-distance trains benefit as well. But so do passengers who travel to and from the many intermediate stations served by long-distance routes. We do not want to miss these opportunities. It's only through those populations who benefit. And it's not only those populations who benefit. In fact, diverse communities across large geographic areas of our country stand to benefit economically and socially from long-distance routes. These benefits are too often overlooked by critics, some of which have even labeled people who utilize long-distance routes as a few hobbyists. The truth is, from March 2020 to March 2022, during the height of the pandemic and times of reduced service frequency, long-distance routes served over 4.8 million passengers. And the numbers are looking even brighter now. From April to June of this year alone, long-distance routes have served over 900,000 passengers. More people rode long-distance routes in June than in any other month since December 2019. What is a need for so many is not a hobby. And we want to encourage the expansion of long-distance service where community need and support is strong. FRA currently funds dozens of state-supported routes with national network and long-distance benefits. We aim to fund even more. Just one example, since 2014, the United States Department of Transportation has awarded 3 Tiger grants, which were renamed BUILD and now are RAISE. 1 RAISE grant, 2 CRISI grants for improvements to Amtrak's Southwest Chief Route that covers Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, along the La Junta subdivision. The CRISI 2017 grant is replacing 42 miles of previously unrehabilitated track, while the RAISE 2021 grant aims to replace the last 34 miles of unrehabilitated track on the route. The remaining CRISI grant focuses on PTC installation, positive train control installation, along the line. Through the President's bipartisan infrastructure law, we can reverse a half-century of underinvestment in our rail network, building a better America that will serve travelers and generations to come. The work is already underway, and FRA will make additional funds available for more than $16 billion by the end of this year alone, to be exact. These investments will advance safe, clean, equitable, and efficient rail that connects people, communities, and markets. Under the infrastructure law, we're going to make an unprecedented investment of $66 billion in passenger and freight rail, along with an additional $36 billion in authorized funding. The work we do today is going to be transformative, and your support of those authorized levels, which we promote through the president's budget, is essential, especially the operating dollars and the capital dollars that Amtrak would receive. DOT-wide programs like Infra, Mega, and Rural are also great funding opportunities for large, complex projects with multimodal, multi-state benefits. And funding for infrastructure improvements in rural areas to increase connectivity, improve the safety and reliability, generate regional economic growth, and improve the quality of life are the types of projects we're looking for. Back in June, FRA announced $370 million of CRISI grant program funds to 46 projects in over 30 states. In July, we made over $570 million available through the Infrastructure Law's new Railroad Crossing Elimination Program. This new program provides funding for highway rail or pathway rail grade crossing improvement projects to improve the safety and mobility of people and goods. I know safety is a priority here in Montana and a priority for passenger rail and in every community. I have the chance to visit, so I encourage you to take advantage of these funds before we continue with the program. I cannot forget the tragedy of Empire Builder Train Number 7 just last year near Joplin. I had a chance to visit Montana back then under different circumstances. I'm glad to be visiting today under different ones. Safety will be a bedrock of our rail efforts. As some have already noted, our proposed crew staffing rule has less populated communities in mind, communities that will need services if there's ever a tragedy. Most recently, last week to be precise, FRA also announced over $233 million in Fed-State Partnership Program funds to 11 projects in 8 states to improve and modernize vital intercity passenger rail. On the heels of this action, FRA has more project selections and funding opportunities scheduled for this summer and fall. In the coming weeks, we're going to issue our next CRISI Notice of Funding Opportunity. Thanks to the infrastructure law, this Notice of Funding Opportunity will make an unprecedented $1.4 billion available to states, local communities, and eligible entities to further modernize rail infrastructure and improve our nation's supply chain and more. That's even more than 3 times as much money for projects that will make rail even more vital. This fall, we're going to make $7.2 billion in funding available through our Fed-State Partnership Program funds. Over the next 5 years, the infrastructure law will provide significantly more money, not just for CRISI and Fed-State Partnership Program, but also newly created ones like the Corridor Identification and Development Program, the Restoration and Enhancement Program, and the Interstate Rail Compact Program. In particular, the Corridor Identification and Development Program also provides opportunities to continue the advancement and development of restoring or increasing the frequencies of long-distance services. You're going to hear more details about the program in the FRA staff presentation later today. These new programs will be vital to establish a pipeline of projects ready for funding, not just this year, but the next 4 years, allowing them to be implemented faster and with greater coordination than ever before. It's important to remember the important stages of a project, from concept, systems planning, project development, service planning, to things like travel demand forecasts, operation analysis, alternatives analysis, those boring, mundane things that go into making a project whole and position you in a place where you are eligible for funds. That's where FRA staff can provide good amount of technical assistance to help you along. Long term, we imagine a future where Americans across the country can access passenger service similar to those in the Northeast, tying together local economies and communities through fast, frequent, and modern rail service. The bipartisan infrastructure law serves as an unprecedented down payment that will help catalyze states, regional, and private sector efforts to get us there. A down payment to advance convenient, reliable, and affordable rail alternatives for family, work, and personal travel. As we forge ahead, the FRA wants to hear from you, our partners. I encourage you to continue to build partnerships, collaborate across state lines, and advance regional planning. As you do, FRA is committed to continued engagement with the authority and other Pacific Northwest states and entities from places like North Dakota, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Colorado, as well as engagement with communities, state DOTs, and tribes. I know later today you'll hear from the Department of Transportation and our tribal outreach efforts. We at FRA also take that seriously. We are committed to developing a long-distance study with your input and a study that highlights opportunities for restoration and expansion. Katie List and Lyle Latellet from our FRA team will elaborate on these engagements during their presentation later this afternoon. Being here today was very important to me. I see for myself that it's just one opportunity in what must be a collaborative effort, an effort that will require public entities, advocates like you, and others to get us from long-distance study to implementation and service. Thank you for being committed to this effort and including me in your summit and for your time today.
All right, the administrator has time for a couple questions before he needs to split. So I have a mic. I will come to you. I see a hand up already.
In terms of the expanding new corridors, could you say which new corridors are likely to be the first? I understand that one in Vermont is already open, and of course, Baton Rouge to New Orleans. Which are the first ones you see opening?
Well, we haven't directly prejudged things, but the Vermont one is a good example of something that had been in the works already prior to the infrastructure law. So that had been in the works for a while. Another example of that is the Berkshire Flyer that is service from New York to Pittsfield, Massachusetts, that also started over this summer. Another example is we're actually reconstituting the corridor between Raleigh and Richmond to a new line that is not in use right now. And that's service between Raleigh, Richmond in the southeast. So those are just three examples of things that are underway right now. In terms of the corridors, what we want to do is we want to hear from states, from a group of states, about what their priorities are. At the federal level, I can tell you, and you all know, that things like the California High-Speed Rail Project are well underway. There's already established service in Florida between Miami, West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach is going into Orlando. We awarded another grant to look at service between Orlando to Miami, which ironically, President Obama and Vice President Biden funded over a dozen years ago and would probably be in use today if it weren't for certain changes in the political landscape that ended that project. Another one is the Brightline West, which is Nevada to the Los Angeles Basin area. I always, when I list those things, it is not to the exclusion of any, but those continue to be highlighted specifically and are well underway. I think corridors that have the NEPA, the 106, and I don't want to talk too jargon, but have the consultation process complete, are more ripe to be well-positioned for development. And I always like to say this, it's one thing for the federal government to contribute, which we're happy to do, and we've got $66 billion to contribute to the effort. But anytime states can finance things themselves, along with other regional entities, we always welcome that. And again, those corridors I highlighted in particular don't overlook service along the Gulf Coast that we're trying to restore between New Orleans and Mobile. You mentioned New Orleans North to Baton Rouge. The Midwest has a lot of opportunities. I was in La Crosse, Wisconsin, to talk about Twin Cities, Milwaukee, Chicago, service there. Chicago East, we call it, from Chicago to Detroit. I am very encouraged to see interest from Oklahoma about Heartland Flyer going from Texas further into Oklahoma and ending up in Kansas. So anyway, I could keep going on, but you see there's plenty of opportunities. And what I'm also encouraged with this infrastructure law, which is exactly what the President, Secretary Buttigieg wanted, is unlocking possibilities, but also for us to learn about things that weren't even in people's imagination prior to the infrastructure law that we're seeing come together because of it. And we're in it for the long run. We hope Congress is in it for the long run. We know there's a lot of work to do ahead. And let me just end with one example now. I was just talking about it earlier today. I remember vividly in the Recovery Act, an application came in for approximately $2 billion from the state of Virginia. Virginia was nowhere close to being ready. It was very aspirational to put that application in. We did select a portion of it for funding, nowhere near $2 billion. Fast forward to Virginia in 2020, 2021, 2022. Absolutely a leader in passenger rail, working with North Carolina collaboratively. The service within Virginia is remarkable, the progress that they've made. We are well on our way to having not a Northeast corridor, an Atlantic corridor going from Boston to Charlotte, North Carolina, because of efforts of states like Virginia and North Carolina. So there's a lot of excitement out there. Again, this region in particular, I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing on the ground, and I just really encourage your efforts. I know in one sense it's competitive. In another sense, we want to lift all parts of this country.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I just got a text message that your vehicle is ready to take you to the airport. So another round of applause for Administrator Bose. So with that, I had promised a couple video welcomes, and if we are ready over there in the control room in the corner of the room, let's roll with Senators Jon Tester and Senator Steve Daines.
This is Senator Jon Tester coming to you from Washington, D.C. And while I'm sorry that I cannot be with you in person, I am grateful for the opportunity to share a few words. And I want to start by thanking Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority for hosting this summit and for inviting me to speak with you. The work that you're doing to expand and rethink Montana's rail system could have profound, lasting impacts on working families and local economies across Montana. It's not only about getting folks from point A to point B, it's about boosting our economy and the businesses and tourism and families that help it grow. I'm proud to have partnered with many of you as we've worked in Washington to negotiate the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which included significant investment in passenger rail, including $28 billion for the national network outside the Northeast Corridor, As you all know, the infrastructure package also included guidance and funding for the Amtrak Daily Long Distance Service Study, which will assess and support the restoration of discontinued essential long distance routes like the North Coast Hiawatha. With your partnership, we've already seen major improvements in Amtrak service, like the restoration of daily Empire Builder service. And with these additional resources, we've got the best shot in a decade to expand and improve passenger rail access across the greater Northwest. Our region really can't wait any longer. Together, I know we're going to get it done and get it done right. So thank you for all that you do, and know that you have my support.
Well, welcome to Billings for the Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Summit. First, I'd like to thank everybody here for your tireless efforts to promote safe, reliable, and affordable rail service to Montana and the Greater Northwest. The restoration and expansion of passenger rail service across Montana will help support good-paying jobs and help connect locals and visitors alike across Big Sky country. Enhanced passenger rail service will help boost our local tourism economy, bringing in thousands of visitors every year to enjoy everything the Treasure State has to offer. These railways will also play an important role in providing rural Montanans a safe and reliable and affordable mode of transportation to and from different corners of our state, giving them greater access to necessities such as health care. So keep up the hard work and enjoy the rest of your summit.
Kyla, do you have time to share a few words about our virtual participants and their possible inclusion in Q&A and such? So just so everyone knows, this is being streamed live, and we do have virtual participants out there in the ether somewhere, and their questions will be answered, although the technology is such that it's going to be a little unwieldy if we pipe them into this meeting. So Kyla.
Yes, welcome to the summit. All participants participating virtually, your cameras will be off, your microphones will be off, and after each session in the chat, there will be a form where you can submit any questions and feedback to us for the summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyla. So in terms of other logistics, we again will be trying to keep these pretty tight to 50 minutes or less to give you a break to stretch your legs or do whatever you need to do between sessions. At the top of the hour, we will start the next session. So if folks are joining us virtually, they will know precisely when we will get going again. And we will do that here in just a moment. Before I do, sprinkled throughout this event will be a lot of thank yous, because it took a remarkable cast of team members behind the scenes to pull this together. And just stay tuned. There will be many thank yous yet to come, but I would certainly right now like to thank Kyla Leonards and Violet Plummer over there staffing our computers. They are from Missoula County. And we could not do it without you. So for those of you who do not know, Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, and again, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, here in the state of Montana, I welcome you to Billings, Montana, and thank you so much for joining. The Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority is a regional passenger rail authority. It's a regional rail authority in the state of Montana. We are an outgrowth of a state law on the books from the early 1990s that authorizes such things in the state. And we are the first such passenger rail authority in the history of the state of Montana. We came into existence in the November of 2020, and since then we have added from 12 founding member counties, we are up to 18 member counties, 3 tribal nations, Amtrak, BNSF, the Montana Department of Transportation, as ex officio members of the authority. And we are delighted to be able to play the role that we have been and continue to play in terms of catalyzing this discussion throughout the greater Northwest region. Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority is a bona fide governmental entity. We're a subdivision of state government, and we're somewhat unique in the state, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of what we hope you can help us with as we continue our advocacy efforts going forward. One thing, and if I don't have another chance to say this, I'll say it right now. One thing that's been extremely encouraging to me is that in the midst of a global pandemic, folks have stepped up. They have stepped up because they knew that at some point in time, there would be a major infrastructure law coming down the pike. And if we did not take action, we would be completely caught off guard. And that's exactly what played out. There's always a good reason, a good excuse for inaction, or to be able to see hurdles without seeing ways over those hurdles. And I'm extremely proud of the many partners across this greater Northwest multi-state region who have supported our efforts here in the great state of Montana. The one take-home message that I might repeat again at the end of this is that in the midst of an era of extreme political divisiveness and rancor, there are still a few things in America we can agree on and that we can come together on. We can accomplish big goals, and this is one of them. And here in the state of Montana, we are a collection of red, blue, a few blue, red, blue, purple counties and communities coming together for passenger rail. So thank you so much. Take a break. We will reconvene at the top of the hour and get going with our next session.